Good evening, a guten Chodesh, haba aleinu l'toivat. I'm taping this shiur on Sunday night, which is Aleph Tammuz, and we're going now into Bais Tammuz. This week's Shabbos is Parshas Chukas. It's not Chukas Bolok. The Magen Avram brings in Shulchan Aruch that the only fast day that was established as a minig is Erev Shabbos Chukas, not by the date, like we have Asara B'Teves, the 10th day of Teves. This has nothing to do with the Chodesh or with the Parsha. It makes no difference when Parshas Chukas falls out. There is a fast day. And if you go into Shomer Shabbos, you will see there's maybe 50 Yidden coming to daven, say the Slichas, and to Lein Vayachal. And there's two such minyanim on that day, on Erev Shabbos. And the reason for it is there were so many calamities that happened to Klal Yisrael that the Magen Avram writes that we should fast. And in France, there were 20 wagons full of Sfarim that were burned in different cities in France on that day. Now you have to realize that today if a person wants a set of Chumashim, he has to go to Eichler or to any store and just buy it. In those days they had to write the Sfarim. So it was really a vast national calamity for Klal Yisrael what happened. Now, if Purim comes out on Sunday and we have to fast the day before Tanis Esther, if it comes out Sunday, we don't fast, of course, Shabbos or even Friday. You're not supposed to fast. The only reason that we fast Asara B'Teves is because it says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, like Yom Kippur. Because of the pasuk that says Be'etzem, in the very essence of the day of that month, the 10th day of either Yom Kippur or that's 10th day of Tishrei, or the 10th day of Asara B'Teves, that we fast on Friday. Other than that, we never fast Friday. And here, without even establishing the date, we established a fast because of the terrible tragedies which fell upon Klal Yisrael in the different times, and it wasn't only one tragedy. Tach v'tat had on the day of Erev Shabbos, Parshas Chukas, an unbelievable thousands massacred. Yidden gave their lives al Kiddush Hashem. So I just want you to be aware that there is such a thing. And most of Klal Yisrael does not fast. But at least we should be aware of what it is. Now, as I've mentioned to you, and I'll just very briefly say, that the month of Tammuz and half of says the Arizal, are din. That the Shem that we use and that we say we're mechaven when we daven Musaf on Rosh Chodesh is the Shem Havaya backwards, Kei Vav, Kei Yud. But the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said that through Torah and mitzvahs and a public Kiddush Hashem can drag the days out of the mud, out of the depression, out of the sadness, and are able to elevate them to tremendous things, geula and other things. So on one hand, the month is a sad month. And we had the Egel, the golden calf. We had both in those 6 weeks that both Batei Migdash were destroyed. And there were so many things that the Meraglim went up for the 40 days were during these 6 weeks. So they definitely, in essence, are sad days. I mean, the Navi Zechariah said that Yehavchu Yomim Elu, that these days will be elevated and transformed into days of Simcha. But we go into a time that it's not the 3 weeks yet, but it's still part of Chodesh Tammuz. So Yidden have to increase knowingly their mitzvahs and their avodas Hashem and the chesed that they do, that they have to add on and try to be marbe in those inyanim which will bring out the best of these days in these future 6 weeks. Now, this week is only Parshas Chukas. It's not Chukas Balak like many of the weeks are. When it comes to Chukas, it's paired together with Balak, but not this week. And the opening of the Parsha, the Orachaim HaKadosh says, because the Medrash says, the opening pasuk is Zos Chukas HaTorah. It's talking about the Parah Aduma. We had 9 Parah Adumas, and the 10th one will be when Mashiach comes, when we all come to the Bais HaMikdash. And the requirement of those days is, in other words, the Parah Aduma had to be completely red. Parah Aduma, the red heifer. And there's a discussion, differences of opinion by the Tanoim in the Mishnah as to how many hairs had to be on the cow if it was red. But let's say you found 5 black hairs. It disqualified the Parah Aduma. And one opinion says even just 2 Parah Bas Shtayim. If there's even 2 black hairs, it's enough to disqualify the complete thing. Now the Medrash says, Parah Zu Yisrael, that Parah Aduma is compared to Klal Yisrael. And it says, Zos Chukas HaTorah, and the Orachaim HaKadosh asks, why? Parah is one mitzvah. Why should it be compared to the whole Torah? Zos Chukas HaTorah, as if this represents the entire Torah and all of its mitzvahs. So basically, I want to discuss with you the 2 items that the Medrash says makes Parah Aduma very different, and it separates it in a category of its own. Because we know that Parah Aduma, even Shlomo HaMelech, who was the wisest of everyone, he knew a reason. We don't know, for instance, shatnez, which is a chok. We don't know basar b'cholov. So there's many things that are chukim, no reasons given, but it says that Shlomo HaMelech understood it. That shatnez, like the Arizal says, if somebody by mistake puts on a suit and it's shatnez, for 40 days they lock out his davening from heaven. That means he could be davening, he could be crying, he could be doing everything that it should be niskabel l'rachamim u'l'ratzon, and it's locked out of heaven because he wore a suit one day that was shatnez. And there's a whole understanding of what shatnez and why it's so severe. I've said it on 1 or 2 of the shiurim in the last 2 or 3 years. But I'd rather go in to why Klal Yisrael and what's the uniqueness of Parah Aduma that it's given such status. And the answer is that we know that Klal Yisrael has, when they had to accept the Torah, that when Klal Yisrael accepted, they said Nasa v'nishma. There was no rhyme or reason. Before they had an explanation or an idea of what was going on, they said Nasa, we're going to do. They accepted before anything, and the Umas Ha'olam, they said, oh, you can't kill, you can't this, you can't that. We don't want any part of it. And they wanted to know before they would accept what's written in this Torah. The Yidden didn't ask for any explanations. They said, first we'll do, and then we'll come. And that's one of the reasons that Parah Aduma is accepted, because Parah Aduma is without rhyme or reason. Nevertheless, we accept it, Klal Yisrael accept it, and we do it without the understanding. Even Shlomo HaMelech and Klal Yisrael did the same thing. So that's one of the reasons that it is considered something that we have to emulate and learn from it, that there are many stations in life where the train stops and we don't fully understand. And you know, some tzaddikim had that hanhaga. Reb Meir Primishlan once received a woman whose son could not, lo aleinu lo aleichem, could not walk. And she got there because the Oyev Yisrael, the Vishnitzer Rebbe, had sent her. She came to the Vishnitzer Rebbe and said, my son cannot walk. I would love to have a Yeshua from you, that he should be able, he's sitting in a chair, he never walked in his life. And the Oyev Yisrael said to the woman, for this you're going to have to go to Reb Meir Primishlan. But one thing I must warn you, that Reb Meir Primishlan, when he takes the kvittel with the pidyon has to be a nice amount of money. So the woman said to the Oyev Yisrael, a nice amount of money? I don't have any money. I'm destitute. I'm an almana. I have a bag that I throw coins into, and it's a big bag, because after doing it for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, there's a lot of coins in there. So when she came to Reb Meir Primishlan and put down the kvittel, she put down together with it the bag of coins. And Reb Meir took a look at the kvittel and took a look at the bag of coins and says, this is what you bring to Meir? Meir Ke? And he took the bag of coins, opened the window, and threw the whole thing out the window, and it was dispersed all over the place. Now, at this juncture of the story, you would think, what kind of a tzaddik is that? Doing this to an almana, that she brought her last penny and nickel and dime in a bag to him, and he throws it out the window? But the woman was curious what was going to happen with the bag, which she saved her for many years. So she ran over to the window and she saw that her son, that never was able to walk, was running around picking up the coins. Which means he wasn't being an achzor or mean to the almana. His derech of taking such a thing and doing what he did was cloaked and masqueraded in bringing the Yeshua for this boy, because a woman cried out when Reb Meir took the bag and threw it out the window, what? That's how you react to me? I'll rely on the Rabbanu Shalom. And she left. But she realized shortly thereafter that this was his way of bringing down Yeshua's and not understanding what he was doing. That's the para aduma. It accomplished, if somebody was tamei because he touched a dead body, he was part of the Chevra Kadisha or whatever, he became tamei. How did he become and revert to tahara, to purity and holiness? He took the ashes of the paradum and sprinkled it. But because he touched those ashes, it was metaher, the person who was tamei, but he became tamei, and that's the reason that they couldn't understand. How could one thing be diametrically opposed, that it's metaher the person and it's metama the other? How in its ingredients and characteristics was it able to do things which are directly opposed and different? In actuality, in its full flourish and effectiveness, when it came out, bottom line, it did this and it did that. So that's one of the reasons the Mefarshim say that para aduma is compared to, that the para aduma is compared to Klal Yisrael and Klal Yisrael is compared to para aduma. Another thing that is said is that throughout the generations, Klal Yisrael was an enigma. People couldn't understand, how did they survive? Let's call a spade a spade. Klal Yisrael, in any time and any place of their existence, was merely but a 1% of the whole population, 2%. There's 340 million people in the United States, and what are there? 12 million, 10 million, 18 million in the whole world. I don't even know if it's 1%. But we're still on the front pages, lahavdil elef havdalas, of every newspaper. The whole UN lives only to contrive and come up with ideas how they can hurt the Jews and hurt Israel. And you saw the anti-Semitism, October 7th, what came out, that when they asked the Hamas, are you sorry at least for what you did? Are you going to at least apologize? Apologize? We wish we could take another 1,000 babies and throw them into the fire. So we know lahavdil elef havdalas. There was a famous writer, Mark Twain, and he wrote a poem that many people thought it was a Rav who wrote it, because he wrote the Babylonians, the Persians, the Egyptians, they flourished and they became the biggest powers of the world, and they withered away. And when it came then to the Romans and the Greeks and the next nation, they persecuted, they expelled, they murdered, they went after the Jews with a vengeance, and there's nothing less of all of those empires that were ruling the world. And he wrote these names and these statements. So the wonder of the world are the Jews, because after all the persecution and all of the devastating actions against the Jews, all of these countries have withered away to the nothingness of ayin va'efes, but the Jews are still here. Signed, Mark Twain. That he recognized, he stepped back and he said, look at the Jews, how have they said? And that is, according to some Mefarshim, why that whole concept of why para aduma, it has no rhyme or reason. Klal Yisrael has no rhyme or reason for its existence. And there's no way to explain other than the fact that they were HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children. And there was even Lahavdal Elef Avdolos, Yamach Shemo, one of these Arabs of Hamas, that they were throwing 400 rockets and all sorts of missiles. Iran sent in missiles, powerful 60, 80 foot long missiles. Not one Jew was killed. And the Arab was asked by the newspapers, you guys were bragging that you're going to take revenge against the Israelis and the Jews, and look what you did, and not one was killed. And he answered and said, what should I do? Their God does not want his people, the Jews, dead. That's what the Arab, Yamach Shemo, answered. So we see that Klal Yisrael, when it says, Parah Aduma, not to be believed our existence and to be believed the fact we're still around, that Para Elu Yisrael. This refers to the existence of Klal Yisrael. Now, in our Sedra, we have the story of Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock, and then water came out. So Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, Zechuso Yogein Aleinu, the Poisek Hador, asked a simple question. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, Yan Lohem Mantim Bi Lahaktisheni, oh, you two are not going into Eretz Yisrael. You're not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Now we know many reasons that they couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael, that when Mashiach will come, people in the Midbar have to latch on to some tzaddik Yesod Olam to be carried into Eretz Yisrael, to be able to have Tchias HaMesim and come back to Eretz Yisrael. So there were many reasons that they had to remain in the Midbar. But the Pasuk says that because you did this, you're not coming into Eretz Yisrael. And we even know that Moshe Rabbeinu accepted it, but he begged Hashem 515 times. Vo'eschanan is the gematria of 550 tefillas. And the pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him after the 515th tefillah, Al Tosef daber elai od badavar hazeh. Don't offer one more, because if you do one more, I have to grant it. That means even HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed openly, you're not coming into Israel, and you will never be, you'll see her. So he had him go up in the mountain and take a look. And he wasn't teasing him that, go look and you can't go in. That was not the case. Every Maisa Avos Simin Lebonim, that Moshe Rabbeinu had to go up on the mountain to see Eretz Yisrael and burst forth with such a thirst and tshuka for Eretz Yisrael, so that every single Yid who will never be zoich in his lifetime to get to Eretz Yisrael will have in his innermost sanctum, in his atzmios, that tshuka for Eretz Yisrael. Even if he doesn't make it, that he saw it and he loved it, but even if he didn't make it, he was able, and that's why, say the Mekubolim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had him go up on the mountain and look at Eretz Yisrael and have the greatest desire from looking and seeing it, and it was able to be given over to every Yiddish neshama, that they would be thirsty and want to have Eretz Yisrael in their lifetime, even if they never saw it or never made it. But Rabbi Moshe Feinstein answers, because he said, his question was a simple one. What's the difference if you speak or you hit a rock? Isn't it the same level of miracle? I mean, let's say someone speaks to a rock and suddenly water comes gushing out. Miracle, amazing, unbelievable. But hitting the rock is also, a rock is a rock. So why was he so severely punished? So said Reb Moshe Feinstein, the reason he was so severely punished was because had he spoken to the rock, it would have been also Maisa Avosim Lebanim, that when Yidden would speak to other Yidden about Yiddishkeit and doing tshuva, it would have had a thunderous impact, 10 times more than it has now. After he did not speak, but he hit the rock. The power of speech to evoke a spirit of tshuva and a desire to break heavens, to come back to our Kodesh Baruch Hu, would have been so strong, because every dibur, every machshava, and every maisa of our avos, the patriarchs, and Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech, their words were eternal. So had he spoken, he would have paved the way for people to break the ice on the heart of someone who is absolutely not davening the way he should or doing mitzvahs the way he should. I was once asked on the radio, how could it be that so many liberal Jews hate Eretz Yisrael? Don't they see what's going on? That people are throwing babies into the fire? Klal Yisrael never did this. Is there something that someone can point to and say that if someone didn't convert to Judaism, that they were thrown into the fire like we were in the Crusades and in all the years of tens of thousands being mercilessly killed in the name of not converting to Christianity? And here, these Jews, intelligent surgeons, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and they see what's going on there in Israel, and they're pro-Arab. They're not crazy, they're intelligent people. So I was asked that question, why so many, like 60% of Klal Yisrael think like that? And I answered and said, because one of the few things that could be metamtem delev is the tarfus. And unfortunately, call them a tinnik shenishba, they don't know better, but they're eating the lobster and the shrimp and the ham and cheese and all the junk that is not only a lav diaraisa and isser diaraisa what they're doing, but it's metamtem delev, that it saturates and it poisons the ruchnius of the thing. Not just it's an aveira, but it absolutely devours the ruchnius of the yid. It's metamtem delev. So after eating all that shrimp, can they think straight? Altaris HaKodesh, what's right before their eyes? They can't even see it. So that's what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said about why the speaking would have made such a difference, and it would have been immemorial, it would have been forever etched into the essence of each and every Jew. But others say that that was not his Avera. The Rambam says it has nothing to do with the hitting of the rock or the speaking to the rock. The mere fact that he said before he got in front of Klal Yisrael, Shimu Noham Moirim, all of you rebellious people, come watch, come listen to what's going to happen here. And it says, because he called, the Rambam says this, that because he called Yidden as a leader, as a teacher, as a parent, we are not allowed to put down somebody who we feel deserves rebuke and deserves to be chastised. But when we do, we have to remain parent, teacher, leader with dignity and still maintaining the self-respect and the dignity of each and every single Jew. And because of that, he says that that's the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu was punished. And his Talmud brought a riot to the Rambam, because on Shmini Atzeres we ask for rain, water and rain, and with the stanza about Moshe Rabbeinu is Alaselahach vayetzu moyim. We mention it in a positive vein, that he hit the rock and water came out. Now, would we put it as a supplication, as a tefillah, part of our tefillah, if it was such a terrible thing he did, that he was blocked from going into Eretz Yisrael? But it must have been a positive scene, because we're adding it into the words of the paragraph asking Hashem, please give us a year of water, and send that we shouldn't have drought and we shouldn't have famine and all of that because of the water problem. But it's a siman, it's a raya, it marshals support to the Rambam that it wasn't because he hit the rock and didn't speak. It was because the way he spoke to Klal Yisrael, and a true leader doesn't address them in such a negative way, even if they were wrong. And many people died because of their rebellion, like every one of the plagues that happened in the Midbar. So we know that in this parsha there is a shira. There's a shira. Oz Yashir Yisrael. It's called Shiras HaBe'er. We know that there were two people in this Sedra who were died, who were nifter, Miriam and Aaron, both in this Sedra. Now, there were different things that came to Klal Yisrael because of their schus. Miriam, the Be'er was there, they needed water, it traveled with them. And as the Bnei Yissaschar brings the story of the Arizal, that he was traveling in a rowboat in Tveria, in the Kinneret, with his star Talmud, his star student, Reb Chaim Vital, and he told Reb Chaim Vital to take a cup of water out of the Kinneret and drink. And Reb Chaim Vital came back to him around 2 months later and said to him, Rebbe, since I drank that cup of water in the Kinneret, there's no inyan in Kabbalah that when I start to learn it that I have to work to bring myself to understand what I'm learning about. So the Arizal told him, because the place that I told you to take that drink, that's where Be'er of Miriam is. And when I knew we were right above it, I told you to take your cup and make a bracha and drink the water. And you were drinking from Be'er Shel Miriam. So the question that everyone asks, and the Chassam Sofer talks about it, why is it that when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, they came to the Yam, and when they went over the Yam, Moshe Rabbeinu said a shira, Oz Yashir Moshe V'nei Yisrael. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu mentioned there? And over here, that was when they just left Mitzrayim, and they were in the water. Now, 40 years later, they were about to go into Eretz Yisrael. Now he's not even mentioned. So, as I said, the Chassam Sofer and others say that the tafkid of a father and mother is to instill and imbue and inculcate into their children in the house such role model lessons that just by seeing the father, how he opens a Gemara and how he learns a page of Gemara, or how he is maver sedra, or how he makes a bracha before he eats, or how he's makabel with a man by the door who wants tzedakah. You don't have to give a lesson to your children, do this and do that. You just have to set the example. And when they live in the house and they watch you for 20 years till they leave your house, they have life-like examples that goes into their bones, and they are able to then get married and have the same thing in their home without having ever had a lesson, because the lives of their father and mother and their Baba and Zayda, whoever they are from, and that they have the opportunity and schus to know and to see how they live their lives, that is the lifelike lesson. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he left Mitzrayim, these were a people that he had to start with Aleph to begin to teach them. They went 50 days, they got the Torah, he taught them Kol HaTorah Kula, all the mitzvahs, all the inyanim, and it was a beautiful pathway that he had, and they learned. But after the 40 years of after Matan Torah, now they were coming, because Miriam passed away, was nifter, to say a shira in her honor, in her memory, in her schus, because they only had all this water, and it was traveling around with them. Imagine a well that when you move 10 feet, it moved 10 feet with you. That they had learned how to live as Yidden. They didn't need Moshe Rabbeinu at this point, because they learned how to be Yidden and how to be responsive to the needs and to the wishes and to the avodah, to make a nachas ruach for our Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that's why, say the Meforshim, that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not even mentioned. Now, we mentioned before that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says Zos Chukas HaTorah, that it's compared to the whole Torah, but we didn't answer the question. Why is the mitzvah compared to every mitzvah? It should have said, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that we could learn up that every mitzvah of the Torah is compared to the Para Aduma. Why? Because it's only the tumah of mess, of death, when someone touches a dead body. Now, why did death come to the world? Adam HaRishon was told, don't you dare eat from the Eitz Hadas. And the Nachash, when the snake came and wanted to pull in Adam and Chava, which he succeeded in doing, he said, Hashem only told you not to eat from the Eitz Hadas because if you eat from the Eitz Hadas, you're going to become like Hashem. Hashem knows everything, and He doesn't want you, doesn't want you to become like Him. V'isem kelokim yodei tovara. And he doesn't want you to become like him, because if you eat from it, you're going to be just like him. You're going to know everything. So once they ate, they brought death and sickness to this world. There would be, if had they not eaten, and as the Arizal says, they only had to wait 3 hours, from hour number 9, 3 o'clock, till 6 o'clock, the 12th hour. Then they would have been allowed to take the grapes and make kiddush on them. And we are making Borei Pri Agofen, says the Arizal, by Kiddush and by a Pidyon Aben and by every bris and by Kiddushin under a chuppah. We say Borei Pri Agofen as a tikkun to the fact that Adam Arishan could not wait the 3 hours to eat those grapes, the Eitz Hadas. So, and he brought death to the world. Now, death is a question that people could ask. Sometimes somebody, lo aleinu, 1,000, is 20 years old, they die. And people have questions. Why did Hashem did this to this wonderful family and to the person himself? Why did this happen? The answer is it happened because Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, and he was driven out of what was tantamount to Olam Haba. When Mashiach comes, it's only the Olam of Mashiach. And then there's a step higher of Tchias HaMesim. And then we revert to Olam Haba, which is like Gan Eden of Adam Arishon and Chava before they did the Avera. Higher than the world of Tchias HaMesim. So because he wanted to know everything, and the Nachash told him, oh, you eat from there, you're going to know everything. You want to know everything? So Parah Aduma is a kapara for someone that touched that dead body who's dead because of what you, Adam Arishon, did. And you ate from that Eitz Hadas, but you'll never understand the actuality and the backbone and the cementing factor of what Parah Aduma is, because you won't know everything and you won't fully understand it. And that's what the Meforshim say as answer to this Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Now, at the end of the Sedra, something happens that we don't have in the entire Chumash. What happened is Klal Yisrael wanted very badly a city called Cheshbon. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them, you can't, even though you need it, and it's important for your existence, and even though it'll be strategically valuable to you, but I am telling you that you cannot go out and fight to gain Cheshbon because it's under the rule of Moav, and Moav was your distant cousin, and you're not allowed to start up with Moav. So Klal Yisrael, very sadly and disappointedly, didn't come near Cheshbon. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Sichon came and fought Moav, and they won the war. So now Cheshbon came out under the rule of Sichon. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, oh, Sichon you can fight with. So Klal Yisrael went to war with Sichon, and they took over and captured Cheshbon. And then there's a poem in the Torah. When I said before, like something you never see, it says, Al Kain Yomer HaMoshlim, Bo Cheshbon, Tibona V'Sikonein Ir Cheshbon. That's like a poetry that the Torah says when Klal Yisrael went and did it. Why is it even so prominent? the way it's mentioned in a poem of two psukim to it, to bring out the miraculous happenings, because it's a lesson to all of us. We sometimes feel that we have to do something, and it's crucial, and it's for the benefit of our avodah, or our learning, or our chesed, or our families, and we're stopped, that we can't do it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his reasons why he doesn't want you to do it. But here, he wanted to give it to Klal Yisrael, but he didn't want them to do it without the lesson. You don't start up with a cousin, Moav. But now that he so arranged the world activity, and that Sichon fought Moav and took over the entire empire of Moav and all of the cities that fell under its umbrella, Cheshvan was now free game. It was something that they were allowed to do. And indeed, what they did was, after it was under Sichon, they took it over. And the Meforshim in Parshas Hazina, when it says that Kenesha Yorakino Al Gozol of Yerachef Yifros Kenafa Vikacheo Yisrael Al Avraso, and the pasuk before, it says all the happenings of Klal Yisrael throughout the world. That means if the countries in Europe, this one took over Czechoslovakia, it was under Poland, it was under Russia, all these happenings happened because of a cemetery in one of the locations that was about to be destroyed, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want it touched because of the tzaddikim there, that there were such strange things, and Yidden sometimes who had the power of opening their eyes to understand min hashamayim what's happening, why this had to happen and that didn't have to happen, that at the end the beneficiary was Klal Yisrael. So when we take a look at everything in the world that happens, don't think Klal Yisrael's on the front page of the New York Times for nothing. It's there because at the end of the story, sometimes there has to be destruction. There's a reason with the neshamas. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows, and only when Mashiach comes and the curtain pulls back and you can see everything on stage behind the curtain. That was a Pella Atzuma, which was a unbelievable, questionable act and tragedy for Klal Yisrael, but it came out subsequently, or will come out, the depth, the rhyme, and the reason. A guten chodesh haba oleinu l'toiva, for Klal Yisrael, for each and every Jewish home, for each and every mishpacha that needs shidduchim, that needs children, that needs parnasa, that we should be able to thrive in the world of being transported to appreciating daily life and seeing only the goodness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows on Klal Yisrael.